What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? AJ Good here at the House of Masks, where we unbox and review cool shit almost every single day, and this is another episode of the definitive Slipknot mask history. Now, in the last episode, we covered Paul's masks, which means that we are officially 1/3 of the way through the main 9 members. And that also means that in today's episode, we are covering Chris Fehn.
Chris, number 3, I play percussion. Don't be afraid to pull on your stick, man.
Not the original Pinocchio, but definitely the original Pinocchio. Chris was actually not the first or the second person to wear the Pinocchio-style mask, but he definitely took the concept and made it his own. I couldn't imagine anyone else sporting that mask. And while Chris is no longer in the band due to whatever reason is happening between him and Slipknot, please refrain from leaving any stupid comments whether you're with the band or whether you're with Chris. Doesn't fucking matter to me, we're just here to cover his masks. Plus, none of you guys really know what's going on anyways. Chris is still a real MVP. He was with the band for the majority of their career, and he always seemed like a real one.
Nigga, I'm a real one. I can't stand you niggas. I be wanna backhand you niggas.
So, let's go ahead and jump on into this list, and that means we are starting off with Chris's first record, and that would be self-titled. Alright, so before we get on into this list, I want to go ahead and give credit to Nico's website, slipknothistory.com. If you guys have seen the other episodes that I've shot, whether it's Sid or Joey or Paul, and now Chris, I've always credited slipknothistory.com because I go on here to find a lot of my photos. It's a very, very easy and fun website. Everything's archived nice and clean, and you can pretty much get any and all information, photos, whatever you need from that website. So I'm going to be dropping that information down below in the description. Make sure to go check out Nico's website and maybe let him know that I sent you. So first up on the self-titled list, we have the Distortions Unlimited Liar Mask, and this is just going to be the album cover Liar. These all were made with the Distortions Unlimited Liar Mask, but they were all converted differently. So this is the first one. This was actually adopted from Brandon Darner for Chris, and he never really wore this thing. I think it was used in like a photo shoot. And that brings us to another one that was made for Chris, and that is the Spit It Out version. And as far as I know, there's a rumor that Chris's mask was actually stolen. Someone said that this variant got stolen, and that would make sense because we really didn't see it too often either. We saw it live, we saw it in the Spit It Out video, but that was about it. The live shows were far and few between. It may have only been worn for one live show now that I'm thinking about it, but yeah. Definitely my favorite of the self-titled Chris's. There's just something really creepy about those dainty little eyes and the giant open mouth, the pure white against the black of his bondage hood and the face paint. I don't know, looks really cool to me. That's all I'm saying. Next up, we go to probably the most well-known of the Chris Fehn masks. We have his Ozfest variant, or early self-titled version. And this is the mask that he would carry through not only on the self-titled record, aside from one more mask, which you guys will see later, but he also wore this all the way through Iowa. So, here we have it, nice and new. There's only a little bit of black smudges on the mask, maybe from face paint or just normal wear and tear, which brings us into the mask's later career. Obviously, it is starting to dirty up here. The eyes are starting to stretch out slightly, which brings us even further. Now we're about midway, and as you can see, this thing is taking a beating. It is already discolored to the point of almost looking yellow, or more of an off-white than a bright white, and we have a lot more face paint and dirt all over the mask. Some of the metal has started to rust up, and that brings us into the late self-titled, and this thing is trashed at this point. It's actually unbelievable that he was able to not only wear this through the entire duration of the self-titled record, but made it last all the way through Iowa up until Volume 3. He actually wore this up to the point that they were recording in the Houdini Mansion, recording Volume 3. So next up, we finally have a different mask on this list. This is going to be another Distortions Unlimited Liar, but this is actually what we refer to as the Freddy versus Jason Liar. And as you can see, this thing is fucking goofy. Gosh. It's got a really strange mouth. The eye cuts are wonky as fuck. Not really sure I understand what was going on in the mind of the person that converted this one as compared to the original self-titled Liar or even the album cover and the Spit It Out version, but this thing is fucking ugly. I actually hated this mask for the longest time, but after getting a conversion for myself, I have definitely grown to like the mask. Here we have it slightly more damaged. There's a little more wear and tear going on here, and you can note that the zipper is closed. Chris often used this with the zipper closed, not very often with the zipper open. I think that's the biggest difference here. Well, we breezed through the self-titled album list, and now we are on to Iowa, and if you thought that the self-titled album list was short, you've got another thing coming, because Chris only used 2 masks for the Iowa cycle. Let's go ahead and take a look at them. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, Chris actually just ended up using his self-titled mask all the way through Iowa, and it worked well. I don't know why Chris decided to go with his self-titled mask. Apparently none of the concepts that Screaming Mad George came up with for Chris's new Iowa mask really made Chris happy, so he just decided to stick it out with his self-titled mask into Iowa. And as I said, I think that it works. The mask changed drastically enough to look like a different mask. It was so beyond beaten up and discolored at this point that it just really took on a life of its own. And you can clearly distinguish a photo of Chris's self-titled mask as opposed to his Iowa mask. Even though they were the same exact mask, it kind of just has that Halloween 1, Halloween 2 thing going on, where the mask was just so beaten that it had actually changed into a slightly different mask. So I've just been showing you guys a slideshow of Chris's Iowa mask throughout the Iowa cycle, and that leads us to the other mask that he wore during the Iowa cycle, and that is the Freddy vs. Jason mask again. Now the reason that this is called the Freddy vs. Jason mask, even though Freddy vs. Jason was the last time we saw him wear it, is because that is where it is most well known. Clearly he did wear it for the self-titled album here and there, but when a mask is most prominently used or most prominently known for being used at one thing, that is usually what it ends up being called. The Reading Festival Joey, the Ozfest Jim, the Tattoo the Earth Clown mask. All of these masks have been used for other tours, different events, and even other popular shows, but they're most well known for that one select thing, so that is usually how they end up getting their nickname. As you can see here, there is not a lot of changes from the self-titled album to the Freddy vs. Jason premiere. Once again, Chris has the mask zipped, and that is it. That literally does it for the Iowa cycle. And just like that, we're on to Volume 3, and in this album cycle, things start to get a little interesting because we see the first masks that were actually sculpted for Chris in use. This means rather than taking a store-bought mask like the Distortion's Unlimited Liar and converting it into a different mask, we actually have something that was created from start to finish for Chris. So let's go ahead and hop on into the Volume 3 list and see how that worked. Alright, so here we go, and first up for the Volume 3 album cycle is going to be the red Volume 3 Chris mask, and as I mentioned earlier, these are the first masks that were actually sculpted for Chris, so you'll start to see a lot of new details such as forehead wrinkles. We've kept the same general liar idea, and we've gone along and added some new stuff such as the sculpted in details, as well as a new paint job. This is the first Chris mask to not be white, whether it is a dirty, weathered white, or a newish, bright white. We now have a new red mask, and this is the first of Chris's mask to feature any other color than white. I did just want to point that out. Now Chris did use this mask for a good bit during the Volume 3 era, so we start to see it going through numerous changes. The first thing that you'll probably notice is that the mask weathered pretty heavily over time. It definitely rusted up pretty quickly around all of the metal rivets, and you'll also notice that a lot of the paint around the nose and the mouth areas has started to fade off. What you can barely see from this photo that is on the screen now is that the nose actually has some stitching going over top as well. Here we have the same mask, even more weathered, more and more paint missing, and something interesting to note about this is that the top middle strap on the forehead has been redone. We've gone from 4 rivets on the forehead strap to 3 rivets. As you can see, the mask is just continuing to weather. We've got a lot more weathering around the eyes. Obviously, the rivets are getting rustier and rustier, and we're actually starting to lose some rivets here. The nose also seems to have a very weird bend in it, almost like this mask was stored for a short time and kind of lost its shape. Next up, we have the clean white version. This is the same exact sculpt, but obviously it has been painted different. We have a very off-white mask here, and this is it in its best shape. Clearly, the mask starts to discolor very quickly, and eventually we start getting some very prominent weathering marks. Now, I'm not sure if these were forced weathering marks, meaning fake, that an artist did them. Maybe Chris rubbed them off just to give the mask a little bit more of a decrepit look, or if this was all natural. If this was all natural, then it says something about either how hard Chris was going in his mask, how poorly they were stored, or how poorly the artist painted them. Continuing on with this white mask, we now see that the nose has been stitched very similar to the red Volume 3 mask that we saw prior, and this was about as beat up as this mask got. Note the fact that not only is there weathering on the mask now, but there seems to be a darker paint coming from the eyes. And this brings us to our very last mask on the Volume 3 list, and that is, of course, the death masks. Again, I'm not really sure what to say about these things that I haven't said already. It's a very cool, very new concept for Slipknot at this point. The death masks are very, very creepy, and the added face paint only added to that effect. It was very cool to see Slipknot switch to these masks during Vermilion, during their Volume 3 performances, and it definitely added something to that song. So that is going to do it for Chris's Volume 3 masks. So Volume 3 is over, and we are cruising right on along straight into the All Hope Is Gone era, and I hope that you guys are ready, because I bet there are some masks on this list that you didn't even realize existed. Chris actually used way more masks on this album than any other album prior. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the All Hope Is Gone masks. So we enter All Hope Is Gone the same way that we've done the other All Hope Is Gone masks, and that is with the Purgatory Potatoes. As you guys know, I'm not the fondest of these masks. They just really are giant papier-mâché potato versions of the Slipknot members. With that being said, I do feel that they have their place in Slipknot's history. Aside from the death masks, this was the most different, if you will, thing that we got from Slipknot mask-wise up until this point. So yes, they were very strange. They don't look that cool, but it is what it is. I think that they fit in right where they are. And that brings us into the actual masks of this album cycle, and what a lot of people don't realize is that the Volume 3 red Chris mask actually makes a return. And as you can see, a lot of the weathering around the mouth and stuff has been covered up. Clearly the mask has continued to weather in other ways, but we've got the beat up red Volume 3 mask here on the list again. Moving into the promo shots, here we have the All Hope Is Gone Chris Fehn mask. This is the first one that we've seen of this sculpt, and this is the general sculpt that he would carry through on this record cycle. Clearly, a lot of pre-weathering has been done to this mask. We already have rust on the rivets, we already have some missing zipper teeth, and we already have some face paint smeared into the mask's paint job. Moving on, we have yet another of these masks, obviously in a different color, and this one has some strange strap jobs going on. All Hope Is Gone was the first album where Chris really let his hair out. He wasn't wearing the bondage hood that often, and clearly this mask has no over-the-top strap, meaning that it was easier to wear with long hair. Again, a lot of pre-weathering done on this mask. We have rusted rivets and face paint alike, just like on the previous mask. Here we have a weird white version of the All Hope Is Gone mask, and this one is very strange, was seldom seen, and definitely had a lot of forced weathering on it. Seems to be a reoccurring theme in these later years, but Chris actually wore this with his bondage hood, so we finally see Chris during the All Hope Is Gone era with the bondage hood back. Here we have another pretty typical, pretty often seen All Hope Is Gone Chris, and once again he is sporting the bondage hood with this. Moving right along, we see this dirty beige mask with a lot of weathering on the face. Once again, Chris has the bondage hood on. You guys have eyes, I don't know why I'm telling you that. Here we have the Liar recast mask, and this was just a recasted, retooled Liar that Chris had made for the memorial shows. This mask was seen during the Sonosphere 2011 show. Next up, we have the Mayhem Fest 2012 mask. This mask is actually pretty cool in my opinion. We go back to the bright white look, not a lot of forced weathering aside from the paint job itself. As you can see, none of the rivets or the zipper have been rusted. And there's something about this mask that makes it look different than the rest of the All Hope Is Gone's. It is clearly from the same mold, meaning that it is the same sculpt, but there is something about the finish that changes the actual shape of the mask. And here we're starting to get into the end of the All Hope Is Gone era and more towards the Paul Memorial shows, the pre-.5 era, if you will. And here we have the Devil and I mask. This mask was actually in the Devil and I. So it is technically a .5 mask, but it is also an All Hope Is Gone mask because prior to it being seen in the Devil and I music video, it was seen live in 2013. And last but not least, we have the Death Mask yet again. Now, I do believe that this was a different copy of the Death Mask, meaning that it is not the same one that Chris wore for the Volume 3 era. This mask does have a foggier paint job. We can definitely see some more highlights on the paint job, and the mouth has been cut open. These Death Masks were worn during the 2012 Mayhem meet and greets, so I assume that the mouth has been cut out to make it a little easier to communicate with the fans. And now we are finally down to .5, the Gray Chapter, the last last album that would feature Chris Fehn in Slipknot. And this is a really interesting album cycle for Chris's masks. I definitely think that Chris's experimentation was at an all-time high, and that led to some really awesome masks and some really not so awesome masks. But for the most part, they were all pretty cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 0.5 The Gray Chapter Chris mask cycle. Alright guys, so we're going to be starting off with that pesky green All Hope Is Gone mask that I mentioned in the last list. As I said before, not only did he wear it very late into the All Hope Is Gone era during the memorial shows, but he also wears it during the Devil and I video when he passes away, death by crows. So we do see it briefly in the Devil and I music video before Chris's new mask is revealed. That brings us to the other Devil and I mask, Chris's premier 0.5 mask. This is one of the coolest Chris masks in my opinion, definitely something different for Chris. This is Chris's first non-latex or non-soft lyre style mask. We have a chromed out, custom made lyre here for Chris, and it is pretty fucking rad. I have a soft spot in my heart for silver masks. I think it's due to Jim wearing the silver Iowa Jester on the cover of Guitar Magazine way back in the day, but that's a story for a different video. Now we move on to the latex copies of Chris's 0.5 mask. Obviously a very, very similar sculpt to the All Hope Is Gone mask. If I had to guess, it's actually the same sculpt, but I can't be too certain, although a lot of the details do match up. Now the biggest difference with the next couple masks is just going to be the paint jobs and the finishes. Clearly this one is red. We also have this white version, which was also an All Hope Is Gone mask. I pointed this one out in the last list, which was worn during the 2012 Mayhem Festival. Fun fact, sometimes Chris wore this one backwards. Here we have the weathered white variant. This was not the same mask as the one that we just saw. If you look close, you'll notice a lot of differences such as the strapping and the amount of rivets and spacing between them around the mouth. Here we have another variant in green and another variant in white, and this one got played with a lot, if you know what I mean. Not only did Chris use this often during the cycle, but he actually really did mess around with the mask. He would do different face paints on it from time to time and different face paints underneath of it, most notably black eyes with a white mouth. Here we have the same version, slightly more weathered. Here we have the same version so weathered that you can actually see some green showing through, especially on the nose. Here we have the same variant with some white face paint smeared across the mask. There not only seems to be some tribal designs around the mouth area, especially under the bottom lip, but there also seems to be a tribal-esque goat head on the forehead of the mask. Definitely one of my favorite things that Chris has done. So now we're getting into the weirdest out of the masks from this cycle, starting with this all purple mask smeared with white face paint designs. This was definitely a strange one, obviously the first time we've ever seen Chris wear a purple mask, and once again he has started to experiment with the face paint on the mask. This thing also seemed to have a goat-style paint job on the forehead, but it was a little harder to read on this copy as opposed to the last one. And finally, we have two masks that were actually sculpted way after the fact and premiered at Knotfest. We've got these weird, almost anime-style Chris's with very dainty, pointy noses. Definitely not the biggest fan of these masks. Here is the first copy, obviously just a plain white one, and here is the second copy. It is an all black version with a bunch of white face paint smeared on it, like the purple copy that I showed you previously. And this concludes not only the list of masks that Chris used during the 0.5 The Gray Chapter cycle, but the list of masks that Chris Fehn would use during his career with Slipknot. Well, howdy fucking ho, we did it again. Another definitive Slipknot mask history video in the books. All of Chris Fehn's masks have just been archived. So, you guys know what to do now. Make sure to let me know down below in the comments what your all-time favorite Chris Fehn mask is. Go ahead, I'll give you a second. Alright, you done? Cool. Mine is not only, as I stated earlier, my favorite from the self-titled album, but my favorite of all of Chris's masks, and that is the Spit It Out Liar. Something about the fact that we never really saw it, and just how creepy it is in general, makes that mask my favorite Chris Fehn mask of all time. So, I think that is going to just about do it for this video. I hope that you guys have enjoyed. Let me know what you think down below. I kind of went back and forth on this one, and I started thinking, you know what, I could probably try to find different video clips of these masks in use, and maybe some extra photos of certain masks to show them from different angles or what have you. And I didn't do it on this one because I didn't know how you guys would feel about that. For example, while I was talking about the Purgatory masks and how they were used, there is clearly footage of Slipknot using those big Purgatory masks, and I almost stuck it in here, but I also don't want to overload you guys. I personally am a less is more type of guy when it comes down to stuff that I like to create. I like for things to be clean and simple and easy to understand, but at the same time, when it comes to stuff like this, I like to be as informative as possible. So, do you guys think that it would be an overload to pack as much stuff in here as possible? Do you like the way that the videos are now? Do you wish that I was showing footage of certain masks being used? Make sure to let me know down below. I would surely appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to making this series as good as possible. So, if we're on the right track, we're on the right track. If not, let me know down below, and I'll see what I can do. Clearly, the videos would take a little bit longer for me to make, but I don't think that that's a big deal because I take time between these anyway. So, I'm going to stop rambling now. Thank you guys again for watching. Huge shout out to Nico and SlipknotHistory.com for all the help. And yeah, until next time, this has been AJ Good at the House of Masks telling you to say no to drugs and alcohol, and we'll see you guys later.
I hate AJ Good. 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 Yeah, I hate AJ Good. You need to put a mask on, mask on. I hate AJ Good, so wanna ask for. Catch me fucking popping wheelies, driving like the NASCAR. Mask on, mask on, mask on, mask on. You might see him off in traffic, he be moving around. I hate AJ Good, tagged it all around the town. I hate AJ Good, I hate AJ Good, I hate AJ Good, I hate AJ Good. You might see him off in traffic, he be moving around.